Okay, welcome back, students. So, in this session, we will be looking into your third module, that is design of sections in Flexure. Okay, so we'll be designing your PSC members in Flexure. So, I hope you know what we mean by Flexure. So, what do you mean by Flexure? What do you mean by this Flexure? What forces are included in Flexure? Flexure ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ force include ಆಗುತ್ತೆ? Or what kind of forces your member experiences in Flexure? Try to answer. No idea.
Bending moment, sir.
Bending moment alla very basic thing. Bending moment, right? The member experience bending, right? The member experience bending. It bends due to your loads, right? So for that we are designing. Okay, we are designing especially for Flexure in this particular module. So when we want to design for Flexure, we need to understand what is Flexure first, what is flexural strength, right? And we need to learn how to analyze your members in Flexure, right? After you learn what is flexural strength, and you have to learn what do you mean by how do you analyze flexural members, and then you can go for design, right? There is a process regarding your civil engineering works. So first thing, what do you mean by flexural strength, right? When you have a beam, you can see a beam, right? We can see a longitudinal section. It is a simply supported beam having a concentrated load W at its center. Okay. So moving on. So when you have a load which is acting at the center, it will deflect or it will sag in this particular shape. You can see it is deflecting or it is sagging. No? So what will happen? The top face will have experience compressive forces, right? The top face will be compressed. The bottom face or bottom fibers will experience tension, right? They tend to move out, right? They tend to separate out, so it will experience tension. So below your neutral axis you will have tensile forces, and above your neutral axis you will have compressive forces, right? That will be generated. So this kind of bending stress will be generated in your particular section, in our cross section. So you can observe this is compressive, and the bottom part it is tensile, and this is your neutral axis. So the bending strength of the section, So what is the bending? So what is flexural strength? It is nothing but the strength in your bending. It is the strength in bending. Okay. So when your beam bends, it is resisted. The bending or the bending is resisted by the material, right? It is resisted by the material which the beam is made up of, right? So that is nothing but your bending strength, right? It is nothing but internal resistance of the section, to what? To bending. Okay, to bending. So when your beam bends, so internal section or the material, it resists that bending. So that is nothing but flexural strength or bending stress which is developed. Okay, so this is C, which is what? Your compressive force, the resultant compressive force, and this is the resultant tensile force. Okay, and these two forces are separated by a lever arm, or the distance between these two forces is what we call as lever arm, that is Z. Okay, Z. This is our bending stress diagram, or what we call as flexural strength distribution. Okay, flexural strength distribution diagram. So we have understood what do you mean by flexural strength. Okay, the load or the bend or the load which causes your beam to bend, then that bending is resisted by your material, right? It is your internal resistance of the section. That internal resistance is termed as bending strength of the section. Okay, so it is particularly resisting bending. Okay, so we are not dealing with axial forces, or we are not dealing with shear forces. We are particularly dealing with bending forces. Okay, bending stresses. Okay, so we have understood what we mean by flexural strength. Now we have to learn how to analyze, right, and how to derive this bending moment, right? Bending moment is generated in your particular beam, right, in your section. So we need to learn how to derive this bending moment, or what we call as moment of resistance. Moment of resistance, it is denoted as MOR, moment of resistance. What resistance? Internal resistance of the section, right? Internal resistance. So your beam bends, right? When your beam bends, it will experience bending moments, right? It will experience bending moments. That bending moment is to be resisted by the section, right? That resistance is termed as moment of resistance, right? The bending moment which is caused by the loads is resisted by the section, right? So that is termed as moment of resistance. So we have to learn how, and we have to derive this particular moment of resistance. Okay, so moving on. So bending moment due to external loads, right? Bending moment due to external loads is to be resisted by the internal resistance or the internal stresses which are developed, okay, by the material of the beam, material in the beam or of the beam. So that is what we term as internal moment of resistance, okay, internal moment of resistance. And this internal moment of resistance should always be greater than your bending moment. It should always be greater than your bending moment or the external bending moment, okay, bending moment caused by your loads. Okay, so the resistance should be more than the bending moment which is coming on top of your the bending moment which is generated due to your external loads. Okay. Now, if this is not the case, if it is the reverse case, if it is the reverse case, if our bending internal moment of resistance is smaller than your external bending moment, what will be the effect? What will be the effect? What will happen? Can you tell? Can you guess? Can you try to answer this question? What will be the effect if it is the reverse case? If the resistance is smaller than the external bending moment? Try to think and try to answer. What will happen in the
It will fail,
opposite
sir.
case? It will fail, right? It will fail because the resistance is not enough to the internal resistance is smaller. That means it is not capable enough, right? It is not capable enough to handle your bending moments, right, due to the external loading. So your beam will not, it will fail, right? So always you have to take care that the moment of resistance, right, it should be greater than the bending moment caused by the external forces. Okay, so this is one important thing. Okay, now internal moment of resistance, as I've told you, we term it as flexural strength. Okay, internal moment of resistance, MOR, that is what we call as flexural strength, or also which is known as bending strength. Okay, bending strength or flexural strength, both are same. Now, types of flexural failure. Type of flexural failure. Have you learned the types of failures previously? Have you learned types of failures? Can you try to name a few types of failures? Types of flexural failure, or any failure you can name. Then we'll move on to flexural failure. What causes a beam to fail? What causes a beam to fail? What will cause a beam to fail?
By buckling, sir.
Buckling your beam will fail. Correct. Buckling will fail. Buckling failure, what we call as, right, buckling failure, when your beam tends to deflect in your axial, particularly in columns, right, particularly in columns. So when your column is there like this in this particular form, and when the axial load is too much coming on top of it, and you have not provided adequate buckling strength, it will just bend like this. It will bend and it will fail. It will bend. Right. So this is buckling failure. Correct. What you have said. Next, any other type of failure? Can you recall any other type of failure? Try to recall. Try to give answer.
Cup
Any
and
other
cone
type?
failure in steel, sir.
Combined?
Cup and cone failure, sir.
Cup and cone failure of steel, which you are telling. Okay, that means you are talking about, I think you are talking about tensile failure, right? When you put a steel bar, when you put a steel bar in UTM and you
Yes, sir.
apply tensile forces, it will break in this format. No, it will break in this format, which you are talking about, right? Cup and cone failure. Correct. So one side will be in the form of a cone, and the other side will be in the form of a the cup, right? Cup and cone failure.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so what you are telling is tensile failure of steel. Tensile failure of steel. Okay, so we have looked into buckling, and then we have tensile failure. Any other type of failure you can try to guess any other type of failure. So try to recall in terms of forces. In terms of forces, we have covered tensile. We have not covered compressive, right? So there will be compressive for failure. There will be tensile failure. Then there will be bending forces. So bending failure. So that is nothing but flexural failure. Okay, bending. And then we have torsional forces. So meaning torsional failure. Right. Likewise, shear also will be there. Shear failure of members. Right. So here we will be dealing into bending. Okay, bending, or what we call as flexural failure, right? Flexural bending failure or flexural failure. So the first failure that occurs is due to fracture of steel. Okay, fracture of steel in tension. Okay, whenever your beam is under bending moment, okay, it is experiences flexural forces, and you have your steel here. You can see you have a steel tendon over here. The steel tendon is there. Okay, and the beam is experiencing bending forces. It is buckling. It is bending. Okay, so when your steel fractures because of excessive force, when a steel fractures, there will be sudden failure. There will be sudden failure. There will be no warning, and this is not usually preferred in your design, no, because because if there is no warning, for the residents or for the people who are residing in the building, and if the beam suddenly fails, there will be loss. There will be a lot of loss of life, right? So because of that, we do not prefer this kind of failure. No, sudden failure is not preferred. So when your when a steel fractures suddenly, your concrete is unable to handle those forces. No, your concrete is unable to handle the tensile forces. Right, concrete is very weak in tension, so your concrete will give up and it will have a sudden failure. Okay. So when will this happen? When will this happen? When your steel provided is very low. When your steel provided in the section is very low, right? When the forces which are coming on top of it are large, and the steel is unable to handle those forces, right? Whenever you provide steel in very low percentage, this kind of failure is observed. Okay. So IS 1343, which is the code book for your pre-stressed concrete, it suggests a minimum of 0.2% of steel, 0.2% of what? Of cross-sectional area of steel to be provided. Okay, this is the minimum criteria. You have to provide this much amount. Okay, 0.2% of your cross-sectional area. Okay, that is what B into D, cross-sectional area. Okay, so this is one you have to remember. Okay. And then regarding HYSD bars, if you have HYSD bars, you can go up to 0.15%. Okay, this is 0.2%, and if you are using HYSD bars, you have to use 0.15% of your cross section B into D. Okay, this is the minimum criteria. Okay. Moving on to next type of failure. The failure of under reinforced section. Under reinforced, right? What do you mean by under reinforced? Can you tell me what do you mean by under reinforced? You have studied this in your previous semesters. Under reinforced section. What is under reinforced section? Try to answer. Now, those who have not answered can try to answer. Under reinforced section. I think it
Steel
is
provided is more than that in balanced sections.
steel provided is what? It is
More than provided in balanced sections.
it is more than the balanced section. What about is that answer correct? Others, can you verify if whatever his answer is correct or wrong? See, a balanced section is when your XU is equals to when your XU, right? XU max there is XU is there, right? Whenever your beam this thing your neutral axis and XU they are equal, that causes a equal what it means it is a balanced section XU, right? So when the steel provided is more, you're telling if it is provided is more, it will become over reinforced. It will become over reinforced. Right? Steel provided is more than the balanced section steel. It will become over reinforced. Okay. And when the steel provided is lesser than the balanced section, if it is lesser than the balanced, it will become what? Under reinforced section. It will become under reinforced. But it is in the range of minimum to under balanced section, right? You have a minimum range. Minimum, right? We know what is the minimum that you have to provide, and then there is balanced section, right? Balanced amount of steel. So in between here is your balanced section. In between these two is your under reinforced section. And if you cross this balanced, if you cross this balanced area, it will go into over reinforced section. It will go and it will become over reinforced. Okay, so if you provide a steel which is in between balanced section and in between a minimum amount, it will be under reinforced section. So usually what we do, we tend to have this under reinforced section, right? We tend to have this under reinforced section in our RCC or in PSC also. We tend to have this under reinforced section. So can you answer why we prefer this under reinforced section? Why do we prefer this kind of under reinforced section and not go for over reinforced section? Why do we tend to go for under reinforced and not for over reinforced? Prabhu Dodmani, I think he has something to share, right? Prabhu has raised his hand. Can, if you have anything to share, please feel free to express yourself. Prabhu, okay, he has lowered his hand. Okay, no problem. Okay, so the question was, why do we prefer under reinforced section over, why do we prefer under reinforced section and not over reinforced, right? Common sense says that if you provide more steel, it will be more safer. But here we are giving steel which is lesser than the balanced section than what is required, right? So why do we prefer this under reinforced section? Any answer, anything that you can think of, any answer? Right, usually what we think, if you provide more steel, it will be more safe. Then why do we go for under reinforced rather than going with over reinforced section? I think the answer is already on the screen. I think the answer, the part answer
Enough
is on the
warning to before failure, sir.
right. Very good answer. So that is what. Okay, that is why we provide under reinforced section, right? Because it will give excessive elongation before failure, because your beam will undergo excessive elongation. Okay, particularly steel. Okay, when you have your loads acting on it, and when it starts to bend, your right, when it exceeds, when your load exceeds certain value, your beam will go under excessive elongation. Particularly to say, your steel will go under excessive elongation. Okay, which will give you time. It will give you warning, right? It will give you warning before failure, so that you can exit the building, can leave the building before the beam fails. Okay, or else you can also take countermeasures to take care that the beam or the structure does not fail. Okay, so the steel is which you provide, as I've told you, is it is greater than the minimum percentage. It is greater than the minimum percentage, but it is lesser than the balanced section, than what we provide in the balanced section. Okay, so that is what is under reinforced section. It gives excessive elongation before failure. Okay, and mainly the failure occurs by crushing of concrete. Okay, crushing of concrete in compression. Okay, in your compression zone, your concrete starts to get crushed, and that will cause failure. Okay, so your beam initially was straight. Okay, then it starts to bend. Okay, it starts to bend, then it will cause cracks on the soffit of your beam. Your cracks will start to appear. It will start to appear, and then when your beam has excessive deflection, those cracks will start to travel upwards. You can see cracks have started to travel from bottom to top, and once this crack reaches at the top, and your concrete gets crushed and your beam will fail. Okay, but there will be enough time for you to exit the building, right? There will be enough warning given before failure. So that is why we prefer this under reinforced section over your over reinforced section. Okay, so this is your stress distribution. This was the initial stage. Okay, initial stage at loading, and when your loading gets excessive, when your load is more than what it is designed for, your neutral axis, it will start shifting upwards. You can observe the neutral axis has started to shift upwards, right? That is seen in under reinforced section. Then once the steel will reach its limit, but not concrete. So this is very important criteria in under reinforced section. Your steel will reach its ultimate limit, but concrete will still have its strength with it. Okay, concrete has not failed, but the steel has failed. Okay, this type of failure is preferred. Okay, this is very important. This type of failure, we prefer. Engineers design the beam in such a way that it is under reinforced, so that during failure it gives enough warning. Okay, so yeah, initially you can see the tensile and compressive forces are almost equal. Then the tensile stresses have increased, right? Increased. Concrete starts to crack. Concrete starts to crack. Your steel starts to elongate, and then the crack propagation occurs right from the soffit to the compressive face, right to the upper face. Your crack starts to travel upwards, and then your concrete fails in compression, or in crushing, right? Crushing failure of concrete occurs, and then your entire beam fails. So this is usually preferred. Then one more important thing is upper limit of max area of steel is generally prescribed in various codes for under reinforced section, right? So there is an upper limit. We know there is a minimum limit, right? Minimum percentage. We know the minimum percentage, as we have studied. It is 0.2 or it is 0.15. 0.15. Also, there is a upper limit, maximum percentage of steel which you can provide at maximum percentage. So this is also provided by your code. This is also provided so that you can keep your section in between these two. Okay, it should not cross this. It should not reach the maximum, or neither it should be minimum. Okay, it should be in between these two values. Okay, that is why the code usually gives us a maximum limit and also a minimum limit. Okay, so that you have to take care that it is between these two. Okay, and it behaves like a under reinforced section. Okay, now coming to the last type of failure. So we are dealing with failure of over reinforced section. Okay, so as I've told you, the steel here that is provided is more than the maximum recommended percentage of steel. That is more. Okay, usually more than the balanced section. So when your moment, that is due to external forces, bending moment due to external forces is equal to moment of resistance. So we design your beam for this particular case. Okay, that is our balanced section. Okay, the loads or the bending moments are balanced over here, and we design. Okay, so when we over design, meaning when we provide more steel than the recommended steel percentage, okay, then what will cause your steel will not reach its limit. Okay, because more amount of steel is there, right? It will not fail. Your steel will not fail. Your concrete fails by crushing. Your concrete will fail first, but your steel will usually not reach its limit. Okay, you can see over here, concrete will fail by crushing. Okay, at its compressive phase, you can see crushing has occurred and narrow cracks will appear. Okay, narrow cracks with less deflection. Your beam will not deflect much. It will not deflect, and lesser amount of cracks are seen. Cracks are also not seen. Neither deflection is seen nor cracks are seen. So we'll never know whether the beam is starting to fail, right? It will not give any type of warning, and sudden failure will occur. So because of this, over reinforced section is not preferred, because it will not give us any warning. It will not deflect. It will not crack. Okay, very narrow cracks will be seen. Less amount of cracks will be seen, and the failure is sudden. Because of that, we do not prefer our beams to be over reinforced. That is why we prefer our beam to be under reinforced and not over reinforced. So I hope this type of failures are clear. The first failure is failure due to fracture of steel. Okay, fracture of steel in tension. Then the second is failure of under reinforced section. Third is failure of over reinforced section. Then other than these three, as you have named many, there are many other failure modes under flexure. So when you have transverse loads acting on your beam, okay, so when you have this is your normal loading. But when you have loads from the side, and many other cases are there. So when you have transverse loads, there will be shear failure which will be occurring. Shear failure may occur. Okay, so before shear failure will occur, before full flexural strength is obtained, even though your beam is capable enough to handle those bending moments, but it will fail in shear. Okay, it will not fail in bending, but your beam will fail in shear. Okay, that is one case. Other failure mode. Then web shear cracks may appear and your beam may fail. Web shear cracks typically in a I section or a T section wherein you have web, right? So web shear cracks may appear and your beam may fail. Then due to web crushing may occur and your beam may fail. Then there is bond failure, very important, bond failure. Right? We have tendons and we have concrete. We have a tendon and we have a concrete. But when there is no appropriate bond between concrete and a tendon, then what will happen? Your beam will fail. right? Steel will simply slip out, it will slip out of your concrete and your beam will fail. So this is in which case this is typically occurring in your pre-tensioned, right? Pre-tensioned concrete, pre-tension, pre-stressed concrete. And anchorage failure will occur in post-tension concrete. Anchorage failure will occur in post-tension where there is no bond between concrete and there is no bond between steel. But your tendons are held by anchorage, is right? We have studied various types of anchorages, right? So anchorage, when they fail in post-tension beam, your entire beam will fail, right? If your anchorage is not able to hold the steel in place, your steel will move, it will slip, and your beam will fail, right? There will be loss of pre-stress. So these are various other kinds of failures. So mainly the first three are important. Also, you can list down the various other failures, okay? Various other failures. Okay, so this is regarding failures of beam in flexure, failure of beam in flexure. So after that, we need to learn how to calculate or how to compute the flexural strength of a beam, flexural strength. Okay, flexural strength, by this I mean moment of resistance, flexural strength or moment of resistance. We need to calculate this value. Okay, mu, moment of resistance, or what we term as mu. Okay, to calculate this, we have two cases. First case is for a T section or a rectangular section, or a T section. Okay, but in a T section, your neutral axis should lie within the flange. Okay, when your neutral axis lies within the flange, the T section will behave like a rectangular section itself. Okay, your T section will behave like a rectangular section because your neutral axis, you can see in this figure, it is in this flange, right? It is in this flange. So entire load will be held by this particular rectangular section, and this web will not be acting. Okay, it will not help in anything. So because of that, this you can see that it is a rectangular section itself. Okay, this is your first case, and in a second case, the neutral axis will be in your web. Okay, neutral axis will be in your web. Okay, that is a second case. In the first case, it is for a rectangular section, or when your neutral axis is within the flange of a T section, or it is within the flange of a I section also. Okay, I section or T section, both will be applicable over here. So what is this? What are these diagrams called as? What is this particularly this diagram called as? Can you recall what is this diagram called as? Something starting with stress dash diagram, stress dash diagram, or stress dash parameters, what we call as three words, stress dash parameters. Do you recall?
Strain parameters.
Stress what? I didn't get you. Stress
Strain.
Stress strain parameters. It is stress block. Okay, you recall? Do you remember stress block parameters you had calculated in RCC? Right?
Yes, sir.
Stress block parameters. Okay, stress block parameters. So this is your stress diagram, stress block diagram. Okay, this is your rectangular section. You can see B is the width, D is the depth. Okay, but D, what I've done is I've drawn it wrong. D should be till here. Okay, effective depth. It is till here, till the depth of your steel. Okay, it is till here, effective depth. Okay, take care while you draw in your notebook or when you draw in your exam. Next, this is your T section. This is breadth of your flange. This is the depth of your flange. DF is the depth of your flange. DF. Okay. XU is the depth of your neutral axis. Okay, XU. Then TW is what? TW is the thickness of your web. Okay. Next, this is a stress diagram. You can see this is the depth. Okay, and take care, here also I have drawn wrong. This is this T. Okay, this diagram, this should be over here. Okay, at the level of steel you have to draw, at the level of steel. Okay, take care while drawing in your notebook. Okay. So this is the depth of your neutral axis, XU. XU is denoting the depth of your neutral axis. Then this is the compressive stress. Okay, compressive stress, initially it is straight and then it is a parabolic going up to this point. Okay, parabolic. So this is compressive, okay, Cu denoted by Cu. This is the resultant compressive force Cu, okay. And then the height, okay, the depth of this Cu, it is at 0.42 XU, 0.42 XU, okay, this depth. Okay. And then this is tensile forces which is acting in the steel. Okay, here tensile forces which are acting in a steel, Tu. Okay, Tu. And the difference, vertical distance between these two is your lever arm Z. Okay, lever arm Z. So tensile force, I have told you tensile force, it is denoted by FPU into AP. FPU into AP. FPU is stress in steel. Okay, ultimate stress in steel. FP. FP into area of steel. So stress into area will give you what? Force, right? It will give you force, right? Stress into area will give you force. So that is what is written over here. Next, compressive force, Cu. Cu is what? 0.36 FCK B into XU. So you have to remember this, okay? 0.36 FCK B into XU. So remember these two things, okay? These two things you have to remember, very important. Okay, this is the value of Cu. This is the value of Cu, and the distance between from the top till Cu is what? 0.42 XU, 0.42 XU. So what is Z? What is Z? What is Z? This total we know it is D, right? This total thing we know it is D, depth. So depth minus 0.42 XU, 0.42 XU will give you Z. No, it will give you Z. Now, moment of resistance, which we term as mu. Mu is what? T into Z, Okay, Z is what? Lever arm, right? Lever arm, the distance between Tu and Cu. Okay, Tu we know it is what? FPU into AP, which I have written here. That is what we have substituted. Z, I have told you it is D minus 0.42 XU. It is Z. Okay, so you can use this formula for calculation of mu FPU into AP into D minus 0.42 XU. So this we have derived using tensile forces. Also, you can derive using compressive force. Cu you can use, and you can derive the value which you will get. Okay, in the end, the value mu which you get will be the same. Okay, because it is complicated. We are using Cu, right? It is complicated. So what we are doing using Tu. We are using tensile force to calculate mu. Okay, remember. Next, moving on to next thing. Okay, what is FPU? What is FPU over here? FPU, very important. FPU. Okay, this FPU value will not be given to us. Okay, FPU value will not be given to us. We have to take this FPU value from IS code, IS 1343. Okay, this has to be taken from IS 1343. There is a table from which you have to refer, and you have to derive this particular FPU. Okay, what is FPU? FPU is tensile stress. Okay, P denotes tensile. Okay, FPU tensile developed in tendons. Okay, it is in tendons because tensile forces are handled by your steel, right? It is handled by your tendons. The value of FPU depends upon the effective reinforcement ratio. So what they are telling, this particular FPU value depends upon this effective reinforcement ratio. So what is this effective reinforcement ratio? Effective reinforcement ratio is this ratio, okay, which I have written over here. AP into FP divided by BDFCK. This is known as effective reinforcement ratio. So AP will be known to us. FP is the stress in steel. This will be known to us. B and D is the dimension of your beam, cross-sectional dimension. This will also be known. FCK is also known to us. So we can find this value. This particular value we can find out. Then this particular value you have to take, and you have to look into a particular table in IS 1343. Let me just share this particular table and show you what this particular table is. Okay, on page number 51. Let me just open IS 1343 1980 and let me show you that particular table. Okay, are you able to see the table, guys? Are you able to see it? Let me know if you are able to see the table. Yes or no? Are you able to see it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is table number 11. You can see it is table number 11 of IS 1343. Okay, page number Page number 51. Page number 51. Remember, very important. Okay, so this is what we have derived AP into FP. Okay, the denotions, the notations they have used different, but don't worry, it is the same. It is AP into FP by BD FCK. Okay, you will get certain value. Say you have got 0.3. Okay, the value of this particular, you have substituted all these values, you have got it 0.3. Okay, 0.3 is here. Okay, 0.3 is here, no problem. Then you have to look whether your beam is pre-tensioned or whether it is post-tensioned. Okay, you have to look whether a beam is pre-tensioned or whether it is post-tension. So you have two different columns for pre-tension and post-tension. Okay, you have separate columns for pre-tension and post-tension. Okay, so that is there. And one more important thing, okay, table number 11 is for effective bond. Okay, when there is effective bond between your tendon and your concrete, you have to refer this table. Okay, and when they have mentioned that there is no bond between tendon and steel, between the tendon and concrete, there is no bond, then you have to refer a different table. Okay, different table. Okay. Then stress in tendon has proportion. So you have to from this you can derive, you can take this particular value out. Okay, and you have to take this particular value from this table. Okay, now let us look into XU by D, XU by D. So it is 0.3, 0.3, and we know the XU by D value. You can calculate XU by D. You will clearly understand when you are dealing with pre-tension and post-tension and dealing with numerical. Okay, so for 0.3 it is what? For pre-tension it is 0.66. Sorry, 0.655. Okay, so the value was 0.3. For 0.3 for pre-tensioned, XU by D value is what? 0.655. So XU will be equal to what? XU will be equal to 0.655 into D, right? This D will come over here. Depth will be known to us. Depth of the effective depth of the beam will be known, and hence you can calculate XU. Hence you can calculate XU. So this table is very helpful. Next, for PFPB by 0.8 FPU. Okay, this also ratio you can find out. It is pre-tension, so it is equal to 1, right? Equal to 1, and then from that you can calculate FPB. Okay, this is FPB which is required. So FPU which we are talking about, right? FPU, that is nothing but FPB. Okay, FPB, the notation is different but the value is same. Instead of FPU they have written as FPB. Okay, so from here you can calculate this particular value and then you can substitute further. So this is regarding your first type, that is for rectangular section. Okay, rectangular section, or when your neutral axis is within your flange. Now the next case is when your neutral axis is in your web. Neutral axis is in your web, or when your neutral axis lies below the flange. Below the flange. Okay, so what we have done, we have taken a T-beam. We have taken a T-beam, and you can see the neutral axis is in the web, or it is below the flange. Below the flange. Moment of resistance is computed by combining moment of resistance of web and flange. Okay, so this is for when you want to calculate the moment of resistance. Okay, the total moment of resistance is what? It is equal to moment of resistance given by the flange. Moment of resistance given by the flange plus the moment of resistance offered by the web. Okay, two separate things we will calculate, and then we will add both of these. Okay, we will add and we will get the final equation. So we'll look into the figure first. We'll look into the diagram. So this is a T-beam. You can see it is a T-beam. The width of the flange is BF. The depth of the flange is DF, capital DF. Okay. The thickness of this web is denoted as BW. Small b with a suffix W. Okay. The entire depth of this beam is what? It is not the entire depth. It is effective depth. Okay, up to the level of steel. Up to the level of steel. It is small d. Small d. Okay, these are the stress diagrams separately. Okay, separately. This is for web. You can see all the notations are in W. Okay, W. This particular diagram is for web, and this particular diagram is for flange. Okay, it is for flange. Okay, XU is what? XU is the depth of the neutral axis. Okay, distance of the neutral axis from the top. Okay, so we will denote this compressive area. Okay, this compressive resultant force as C1. And this compressive resultant compressive force for this thing as C2. Okay, C2 is for flange and C1 is for web. Okay,
Sir,
yes.
sir, presentation is not visible.
Okay. I'm sorry. I think it is visible now. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Visible, sir.
Yes, good. Very nice, very nice. Okay, so I'll explain once more. So as I've told you, AP by AP, FP by BD, FCK, right? This value we will calculate. So suppose it is 0.3, right? It is 0.3. You have to look whether it is a pre-tension beam or whether it is a post-tension beam. And for these values, you have to calculate what? You can calculate XU and you can calculate FPU, right? FPU from the from table number 11 or from the table number 12. From what? From IS 1343. So once you get FPU, once you get XU, you can substitute over here. XU you can substitute, FPU you can substitute, and you can get moment of resistance. Okay, that is what was our aim. Our aim was to calculate moment of resistance. Okay. So this is very easy when your section is a rectangular section. But moving on to next section, when your neutral axis is below your flange, you can see your neutral axis is below the flange. Okay, as I've told you, this is BF or the breadth of your flange. Then DF is the depth of your flange. Then this is the thickness of your web, And this particular diagram is for web. This particular diagram is for web, and this particular stress block diagram is for what? It is for flange. It is for flange. Okay, the resultant compressive force over here, acting over here, it is denoted as C1, and the resultant compressive force acting here is C2. Okay. And the tensile force here you can see it is denoted by TW, and the tensile force here you can see it is denoted by TF. Okay, and take care while drawing this. This should be at that that TF and TW should be at this level. Okay, I've drawn it below, but while drawing you can draw it over here. It is over here. Okay, at the level of steel. Next thing. Okay, so C1 is located at 0.42 XU at a depth of 0.42 XU, and this particular C2 is acting at half of depth of flange. Okay, depth of flange is DF, right? Half of it is DF by 2. So your C2 is acting half of DF by 2, right? So this thing you have to remember: 0.42 FCK, and this 0.42 XU. Very important. Okay. Now what is this C? We know C. I told you about C. Now what about these tensile forces which are acting at the level of steel? Okay. So TW, as I've told you, force is equal to what? Stress into area. So this is stress into area. Area of what? Area of steel in your web. Area of steel in web. Area A of steel. Steel we denote as P. Right? And W meaning web. Thus, this multiplied by FPU. FPU will give you TW. Right? We are dealing with web. Now, similarly here you can see FP. Okay, FP into APF. Area of steel in flange. Okay. So as I've told you, so moment of resistance, it is moment of resistance offered by the flange plus the moment of resistance offered by the web. Moment of resistance separately you have to calculate, and then you have to add. So similarly, what we'll do here, total C is equal to C1 plus C2. C is equals to C1 plus C2. Compressive force in the web is equals to 0.3 FCK B into XU, right? This is the same thing which we have done in the previous thing, right? Previous derivation, 0.3 FCK B into D, right? B into XU, the same thing, B into XU. But in the next case, when we are solving, it is breadth of your web, okay? Breadth of your web. Right, BW into XU, and this is for flange. C2 is for flange, so 0.45 FCK BF minus BW into DF. Okay, remember this particular equation. Okay, these two equations you have to remember. Next, T, I have told you T is equals to what? FP into AP, right? Force, stress into area will give you force. Okay, now what is AP? We have to calculate. AP. AP is what? AP is area of steel in web plus area of steel in flange. Area of steel in web plus flange. So APF is equals to what? APF. So APF is this thing 0.45 FCK BF into. So this is a standard relation. There is no derivation for you. You have to remember this particular equation. Okay, remember this. So we know APF. So what is APW? AP total minus this particular flange area. He will give you the remaining web area, right? Web area. Web area is total area minus this flange area. Okay. So all these things we know. Once we substitute this back, we will get the total moment of resistance. So let me tell you, this is for web. This particular moment resistance is for web, and this particular thing is for flange. Okay, for flange. So all these things you can see they are denoted as W, and here it is denoted as F. Okay, flange and web. So stress into area into this particular distance. Okay, D minus 0.42 XU. Right, D minus 0.42 XU. Here you can see this particular lever arm you have to multiply Z. Z is what? Total depth minus 0.42 XU. Similarly here what is Z? So here you can see Z is equals to what? Z is equals to total depth minus df by 2 minus df by 2. Okay, so total depth minus half of df, right? Half of df. Here you can see. So FPU into APW into D minus 0.42 XU, this is nothing but Z. Okay, similarly here you can write FPU into area of flange into this particular bracket. Okay, instead of writing this whole thing, okay, you can simply write it in this format also. Okay, in this format also you can write. So these particular formulas are very important. So this formula you can note down. And then the first case formula, moment of resistance for the first case. This is also very important. Okay, using these two particular formulas, we will be able to solve, and we will be able to find out the moment of resistance of any type of PSC member, pre-stressed member, whether it is a post-tension, pre-tensioned number of cables, or whether it is I section, T section, rectangular section, any section. Okay, we will be able to find out the moment of resistance. Okay, so the main thing that you have to take care is to and to know whether the neutral axis, okay, neutral axis is within the flange or below the flange. Okay, within the flange or below the flange. Depending upon that, you can calculate the moment of resistance. Okay, using this formula or the next one. Okay, so usually they do not provide you with the XU value. XU value is not provided, right? XU value is not provided. XU value is computed from table number 11, right, of IS 1343. So first, what you can do, you can assume that the neutral axis is lying within the flange. You can assume, and you can find out the value of XU. You can find out the value of XU, and if the statement is turning out to be false, what you can do, you can write down a statement that the neutral axis is not within the flange, it is below the flange, and then you can calculate for the moment of resistance using the second formula. Okay, so this is regarding computation of flexural strength, or what we call as MOR, moment of resistance, or MU. Okay, so in the next class, what we'll do, we will solve a few numericals regarding moment of resistance in the next class. Okay, so is this part clear regarding the derivations and regarding moment of resistance? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
If you have any doubts, feel free to ask. Okay, don't hesitate while asking doubts. Others might also be having the same doubts. So if you don't understand any of the things, please tell me. I'll explain once more if you want. Is it clear, guys? Everyone has to
Yes,
reply
sir.
yes, no.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So you can start typing in your attendance, and you can leave the session once you have typed in the attendance. Quickly, please type in our attendance quickly. Okay, so I hope everyone has given their attendance. I hope quickly I have to stop the session. Quickly type in your attendance.